It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Haven't seen you. Hope you've been well, which we'll talk about as we go along. So thank you for being part of the symposium, and you're going to tell us where you've been for so long.
Oh, I've been in my home, at my home in Israel, doing mediation mostly. That's the main thing I do for a living. I mediate and I teach mediation and having fun with my grandchildren. That's pastime.
Very nice.
That's where I've been. Yeah,
How many grandchildren?
five, five of them.
Wow, David, you've got a good life going. You have so much to teach them.
And to learn from them.
No, I'm telling you, actually, grandparents really have a very important role to play in relation to instilling basic values, culture, all that. I don't know how you look at that.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I look at it. I have great fun working with my grandchildren, teaching them things, taking them out, enjoying nature with them, which is something they do less without me, because they have their televisions and telephones and all that. I take them cycling. I take them rowing on the river. Yeah, I have fun with them.
That's really nice. It keeps you active, keeps them active.
Yeah, exactly.
But David, what's going to happen right now is that I'm not going to let you talk about yourself. I'm going to ask you to talk about whatever you know about the symposium, and then we'll have you talk about yourself. So what do you know about the symposium? These are the speakers that we have in the symposium. So,
Okay.
so these are all the speakers. And of course, wait, I think there's another one that I have where I put them on the sheet, but two people I still have to, basically they haven't done their session, but I've told them that whatever time they get, because I don't want to miss anyone out. Everyone has something to contribute. Someone gets sick, someone has some other problem, so we should not have their session. So that's how I look at it. So that's what we have. Yes, simple. Yes, David, about the symposium, what the
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it's a fantastic enterprise by you, and I appreciate the effort and the thought that you invested in it, and your resources, of course, and time. I don't know how you find the time to run such a big operation. And the symposium, first of all, for me, is a gathering of good people, people who try to make peace, to solve problems, to advance and to exchange knowledge on mediation, on conflict resolution. This is the second symposium I'm participating in. The first one was mediation and culture. And I'm still struggling to find the difference between the first one and this one, because we're talking basically about how do we mediate within cultures, how do different cultures solve their own conflicts. I'll say a few words about the indigenous populations, because I have, a question mark about many countries who actually are the indigenous populations. But for me, it's an encounter where we deal with different cultures, including the culture of Western mediation, how they meet, what can they learn from each other, how can they benefit each other, how can they coexist. And so this is the symposium. I don't know if that was your intention, but that's the way I interpret it.
No, very nice. That's the whole idea. That's why I asked people to talk about it, because everyone has their view and we have to take everyone's view and, of course, discuss it. Because the thing is, the difference between the first one and this one is that of course, some parts went into, like, you had what the Jews in the Balkans brought in and someone else brought to. Some people spoke about that, but then also it went into the current law, what is happening in their countries currently and all that, which here it's a little more, I would say, specialized in relation to indigenous peoples, so that a more purer form of mediation as I see it, which yesterday there was someone who from Peru who gave a very good terminology, ODR, original dispute resolution. I
Wow.
really
Great,
like that. So that's
great.
what we're trying to get at. Look, this is a first step. The second step comes on 15 September when we talk about colonization, decolonization, and mediation. So all this that we had and that getting affected, destroyed by colonization. So I've been talking about it, saying that this is more positive because all the positive things that you find in indigenous cultures, and that will have the negative aspect of it. Where did we go wrong? What went wrong? How we, even when we were changing from colonization to decolonization, what were the things we kept, what are the things we've still kept, and how has that's affected mediation. So that's how generally the idea. So it's a little, I would say, there was like what you brought in from the last symposium. That's why you had to be here also, because that was connected to what this is all about. And there was like Christian Charanji were there, what he was talking about in relation to Crete. So those are kind of things we want to bring out. So that's just generally the idea. So David, it's all about you, the topic,
Okay.
and like the drill, I'll come in only when you ask me to come in.
Yeah, I'll just put on my presentation. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I gave it the title about indigenous dispute resolution and modern mediation. What can we learn from each other? And maybe the first thing I wanted to mention is that we have within us as individuals and as societies two forces that are competing. One is the force to live, which means to stay alive, to adjust to changes, to adjust to new circumstances. And the other force is the force that drives us to survive, which means to maintain our own characteristics, to be who we want to be. And when we're talking about individuals, when we're talking about cultures, in our world, with immigration, with changing populations, with wars, I think we're talking here about cultures that have their own original traditions and ways of doing things, but they have to adapt to different colonization or immigration or modern technology and education and mass media and things like that. So that's something to think about throughout the symposium, I believe. And I looked at the definitions of indigenous, and if we look at definition B here, we're talking about something that relates to the earliest known inhabitants of a place, okay, especially of a place that was colonized, which would be your next symposium. This is a Merriam-Webster dictionary, or the Cambridge Dictionary says indigenous refers to the people who originally lived in a place rather than people who moved there from somewhere else. I think that in I don't know, I guess 90% of the populations, it's very, very difficult to determine who were the original people in each territory, because I think human history is a history of wars, invasions, conquest. I think every culture, the big stories, the main ethos of cultures, like the Mahabharata, talking about the great wars, and Islam talking about the move from of Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. We're talking about people who moved, who changed their location. They encountered locals, but as I say, over so many generations, I don't know if in many, many places we can indicate who are the indigenous people, and therefore I wanted to ask questions about changes in population, and especially because Israel is a country of immigrants, and we know now that many people from Asia, from Africa, are moving to the Western world. That's the opposite direction. They're not being conquered by Westerners, but they are invading or migrating to these places because their original countries are war-torn, famine, other problems, interior problems mostly, weather problems. And so when a group of immigrants move to another country, how does this encounter between their traditional, indigenous, original culture, tradition, and what is of my interest, the way they resolve disputes, what happens when they clash with another culture? And I say that from what I heard over this symposium from people who spoke, some immigrants will come with their own traditional dispute resolvers. For example, the Jews of Bukhara, Uzbekistan, that I spoke about last year, and I mentioned them again here, they came with their religious leaders, with their rabbis, with their rich men, but some come without their original social construction. I heard a mediator from Kenya speaking on this symposium, saying that most refugees that come to Kenya are women. So they come because the husbands and the sons, they are remaining in their countries and they're fighting. They're in the armies or in their militias. And so some immigrants, also work immigrants that we see in many, many countries now. You don't see families, you see young men. And they come without their elders and without their religious leaders, and they come without their original mechanisms of solving or resolving disputes. So as far as I'm concerned, I focus more on the question of tradition and traditional cultures than of indigenous cultures, because I'm talking about people who move from one place to another and encounter. I put here a short clip from a movie or a musical called The Fiddler on the Roof, talking about Jews in Russia many, many years ago, because there's a nice definition of tradition, so I'll show it.
But let me tell you, David, once you play that, if you play that, that means your session is going to come under copyright claim. And YouTube will say there's a copyright claim because anything that you play which is someone else's copyright, they have a problem with that. That's the only problem with playing clips, which I have had that experience in one particular session where I played something from YouTube and it said copyright claim. So
okay, I'll skip.
But that it is a very nice movie, I think, and that song is really nice. I think everyone should watch it. Everyone should watch it.
The guy says that what keeps us in balance is our tradition, the ways we do things. There are special ways to do, how to wear clothes, how to go to work, how to treat your family. And these are the traditions, and they maintain our stability. That's the claim. And tradition in the guys in the movie definition is that everyone, because of tradition, knows who he is and what is expected of him to do, and what does God expect of him to how to live, etc. So this is just the.
If you want, what we can do is I can open it. Let me open the lyrics out from Google search, and then. But only thing I'll have to stop your screen for a minute. Let's have a look. It was really nice. I love that movie. I actually love that movie.
Okay.
So let's just have a look at it. What's the problem? Yeah. You can say it if you want. Why don't you sing it, David? Why don't you sing?
I don't remember the lyrics.
Yeah, the lyrics are right here for you. Right here. In a village of Anatevka, you might say, well, every one of us is a fiddler on the roof.
That's right.
So this is what you were saying. We stay because Anatevka is our home. And how do we keep our balance? That I can tell you in one word: tradition. And then you want to talk about this. We've kept balance for many, many years. Here in Anatevka, we have traditions for everything, how to eat, how to sleep, even how to wear clothes. For instance, we always keep our heads covered and always wear a little prayer shawl. This shows our constant devotion to God. You may ask, how did this tradition start? I'll tell you. I don't know. That's a good one. But that's something that happens with traditions in general.
Yeah.
Which you are going to do with your grandchildren. You are going to make sure as much as you can find out. Let's see. Okay, let's see. These are nice things.
Okay, so
that's about it. Anything else you want to point out?
No, I'll carry on with my presentation.
Yep.
Where are we? Okay, so for those who are not familiar with the globe, this is where Israel is, and I showed where Vikram is, so we know how to relate. We are in the Middle East. We are, again, when I'm talking about wars and immigration, I'm talking about a country here, Israel. Over history, Israel was invaded by the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, the Greek, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Crusaders, the Arabs, the Turks, the British. So, we had a lot of influences injected into this little country.
But David, can you just start the slideshow? Well, slideshow is not on.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not working. I'm trying.
Maybe you have to shut it and do it again. Is it because of that? Because I stopped your screen share?
I can do that. I'll shut it.
Could be because I stopped you, or I should not have stopped it, but that
That's
song
okay.
is important. The song is really important, actually very nice. I liked all the songs there.
Now I'm lost.
There was actually a statement in that movie about any blessings for the Tsar. Yes,
yeah.
may God bless him. Keep the Tsar far away from us.
Right.
That was a nice one.
Oh, wait a minute. I would have to search now for the presentation on my computer. Just a minute. Second.
Yep. Maybe if you go to the recent, if you open PowerPoint, if you go to File on top, just go to Recents.
I'll try that.
Yeah, that'll be the easiest. We'll open the last one. On File.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, easiest way to do it.
Okay, and now I come back to you. And I say share screen. Here we are. Okay. Share. Sorry about that. Let me just shift to where we were. Okay, I'll continue from here. And I'll say, okay. Okay, so mediation came to Israel in the early 90s. And in 92, mediation was recognized by the Israeli law in the laws that govern the courts. And that means that courts will recognize mediation agreements, and courts will refer cases to mediation and will endorse the decisions made by the participants in mediation. And again, I'll say that the mainstream mediation in Israel is American, is interest-based mediation. It's Harvard-inspired, Fisher and Urey and Patton. Basic ideas, the concepts are voluntary participation, self-determination, win-win thinking, rational thinking. And when I started to understand or try to understand culture in the context of mediation, I came from this very Western way of thinking about conflicts. And last year I spoke much more about this group. I'll say a few words. This is a group of Jews who immigrated since the early 90s to Israel from mostly Uzbekistan, some from Tajikistan. These are republics that are mostly Muslim population, and they were part of the USSR, of the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union fell apart, they became independent states. And Bukhara is a city in Uzbekistan. We're talking about other cities, Samarkand, Khiva, Tashkent, other, and many Jews immigrated to Israel, and they settled in a small town called Ramle. And some initiative took a group of volunteers and gave them a basic mediation course. And then they hired me, where it says team building. They hired me to turn this group into a dispute resolution center for the Bukharian community in Ramle. And I know how to build a team. I know how to create workloads and assignments. And I went to work. These are the nice people that I was working with. My work ended in failure because nobody sent cases to our volunteers. All of the volunteers came from the Bukhara community, and we went to the Bukhara community and we spoke in their synagogues and clubs and schools, and we published in their publications in Russian and in the Bukhara language and in Hebrew. Nobody came to the group. Nobody approached the group and said, "We have a dispute, please help us resolve it." And it took some time because these people are very polite and they don't want to offend me. And it took them a long time to start hinting that the mediation we taught them is incompatible with their culture. What we taught them in our Harvard-inspired mediation course is not what they are used to do. And we decide to study and see if we can find a solution. And I start my journey of studying. And I look in all directions. I came across this wonderful book, and I have good connections with the Singaporean mediators and judges. And I got to read this book, and I find a culture that describes itself as based on Confucianism, and that the mediators there are persons of authority. Now, I was trained that the mediator doesn't exert his authority in the room, but in the East, when they made an adaptation of the Western mediation, their mediators are figures of authority. And then I looked around my home in Israel to the Arab population, and I came across the traditional sulh, the way the Arabs will resolve their conflicts, which is a combination of mediation techniques and arbitration techniques. This is where I met Dr. Doron Peli, who became a good friend of mine, and he's a word expert on the sulha, the traditional Arab peacemaking process. So I get to understand how they work, how they operate. And I looked to the south, to Africa. About 140,000 Jews from Ethiopia immigrated to Israel starting in the early 80s, and they're still coming. And they come with what they call the shmagloch, which in Amharic language means the old men or the elders. And they come with their own dispute resolution mechanism, which is the shmagloch. And then I learned a lot, and I benefited a lot from listening to mediators and to people from various countries on this symposium and on the previous symposium. And I heard about the way that the indigenous or the original or the traditional dispute resolution works in many, many societies. it's very interesting because when they speak, they have light in their eyes and they smile and they're very proud and they say, you don't understand. We have a special tree and the people come and they sit around the tree and it's only the elders. And when I compare, I hear that in many original societies, it's exactly the same mechanism. It looks the same and it uses the same type of problem resolvers. So I do my homework, and then I go a lot into theory. And together with my friend Doran Pelly, we come to understand the existence of three types of cultures with relation to how people resolve their disputes. And we came up with a three-type model: honor, faith, and interest. Honor, you'll see Arabic letters. Shaf means it relates mostly to the Arab words of the Middle East. Faith, miense, relates to Asia, and interest with the dollar sign will relate to our Harvard-inspired Western industrialized modern countries. So honor will go to the Middle East, Mediterranean Sea, and many other Arab cultures. We're talking about a culture that's inspired by the Quran, by the Muslim faith, and also principles of an eye for an eye and taking revenge. We're talking about societies where the Maslow hierarchy of needs sometimes gets mixed up, because when we're talking about our honor and the honor of the family, sometimes it will take precedence over basic physiological needs, because I will murder my daughter or my sister if she will bring shame to our family. So I put our honor or the shame on a very high place in the hierarchy of needs. The traditional dispute resolution mechanism would be the sulha or the sulh. So there's a streamline of how it's done. It's done by a group of people, respected people. The group is called the Jaha. Again, wealthy people, elder people, important people, and they start a process that can take months and can also take years. I will also emphasize that we're talking about a collectivistic culture, and the disputes are not between individuals, they're between clans or between big families. And so this is the maybe the typical mechanism of dealing with a dispute, other than taking revenge, other than taking and killing the other person or restoring the honor by some act of violence. So this will come to replace revenge with forgiveness, with harmony. When we look to the East, we're talking about the culture of faith. We're talking about something that's a kind of a social image. And there are a few definitions from literature: a form of respect which interactants assume towards each other in the course of their interaction, your psychological image that is granted or lost and fought for or presented as a gift, etc. Very interesting concept. I brought here, I showed it also last time, some infographics by a artist called Yang Liu, making the difference between the West and the East, between the modern societies and the Asian societies. And when we're talking about disputes, when we're talking about arguments, we will see that the blue guy, when he wants to has his emotions, he will express his emotions. And the guy in the East, the guy who maintains face, he's angry, but he will smile. He will not expose his emotions. When we're looking at the blue part of the drawing, we see how do we approach things. And how do we express ourselves? And we have a saying in the West, we go to the point. So we start in point A and we go straight to point B, and that's very, very simple. We're in the traditional faith cultures. We're talking about a much more intricate way of expressing myself, and it's mostly indirect. And also, how do we walk into a problem? How do we walk into a dispute? So here on the left, in the blue, the Western, the modern world, we walk into the problem, we clash, and the East, by the way, also in many cases, also the Arabs, when the Arabs speak, they will not speak directly. They will also go around the point and around the corner. And so we're talking about dispute mechanisms resolving that all series of acts of giving face and providing face and saving face and presenting face. And then we come to the third culture, which is the one I guess I come from, and many people in the United States and Canada and Australia and Western Europe come from. And we called it the culture of interest. What can I get out of this? What is the best outcome for me? When we teach Fisher and Urey, and we're getting to yes, we're talking about maximum profit. We're talking in a way that the capitalist thought will go. And we're talking about think rationally. Don't think about your emotions and revenge and all that. Think about the best outcome that you can, the highest profit that you can extract from this situation. I trace it to maybe to Max Weber's writing about the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. We're talking about making profit, making a capital, making our capital grow. And when we're talking about values, we maintain our values because they are good for our business. We are honest because we don't want to lose our clients, okay? Not because honesty is a good value, because it brings us good dollar value. And I go back to my Bukhara Jews and try to understand why do we fail? Why can't we bring their people to mediate with us? And we designed research and carried it out together. I had a lot of assistance from the volunteers in the group. And we're looking at two things. One is, I believe many of the listeners here are familiar with Hofstede. Hofstede are a Dutch father and son, both investigating or learning about cultures, and they came up with a model of cultural characteristics. And so I try to understand who are or what are the cultural characteristics of these people from Bukhara, and to compare them with modern Israel, which should represent here the modern mediation. I would add also, maybe Vikram, I'll go back 20 minutes to what we said in the opening of this session. The Bukhara Jews, if you're trying to trace their indigenous culture, I don't know how to do it. They are Jewish, but they grew up in a Muslim society, and they went through 60 years of communism. And so, who are they? What is their real culture? What is their real tradition? And definitely, it's been inspired by all these influences. And the second thing we were looking at is just to find out, how do they prefer to solve their conflicts? Who will they go to when they have a conflict that they can't solve on their own? I'll mention two of Hofstede's characteristics of cultures. One is called the PDI, the Power Distance Index, which means how does this society or culture tolerate inequality? How do they take it as granted that there are people who are more important or higher in the social strata than others? For example, that men and women are not the same, and a father and son is not the same, or If we go to Confucius, the ruler and the people that he is ruling are not the same. A teacher and a student are not the same, etc. So PDI means how much does this culture accept inequality? And the other measure here is the UAI, the Uncertainty Avoidance Index. How much does this society tolerate ambiguous situations? In other words, for example, we in Israel, we can't stand ambiguity. We're very blunt. We ask you, are you coming or are you not coming? Are you with us or against us? How much did you make, or what's your income? We are we don't like ambiguous situations, but many traditional cultures, they live on ambiguity and they avoid conflicts because they're not specific. So one of the results of this research, you can see in the graph here, if we're looking at the PDI, the one on the left, Power Distance Index, we will see that the Israeli modern culture does not accept inequality. I'll say that maybe sadly, because Israelis have respect for nobody and for nothing. Not for our elders, not to our teachers, not to our policemen, not to our political leaders. We really have respect and to the law. But the people who came from Uzbekistan, from Bukhara, the green column here, for them, it's very natural that people are not equal and that people don't have exactly the same rights. Same thing here with the second from the right. Israel are very high on the dislike of ambiguity. We are specific, we are concrete, we are rude, we are blunt. And the people who came from Bukhara, they'll prefer, and I saw that also in China, I saw that also in the Arab world, they prefer not to say exactly what they mean, not to give exact figures, and not to say yes or no, but to leave things ambiguous to avoid clash, to avoid conflict. And when we asked these people, if you have a conflict that you can't solve on your own, who will you go to? The most popular figure is a rabbi. A rabbi is a religious leader, 43%. And I'm talking about people that not all of them are religious, not all of them go to synagogue. Many of them are university trained, and they're not religious people. But when it comes to a dispute, they have their rabbi and they go to the rabbi or a respected elder or someone of wealth, someone who came with a lot of money or made a lot of money. And these are community-based conflict resolution mechanisms. The state comes far below court. Only 13% will take their disputes to court. The modern politicians of their own community, only 5%. The police, only 1%. So we see that if they represent indigenous or traditional cultures, when they talk about dispute resolution, they go to the community facilitators and to someone of authority, someone they respect, and not to the courts, and also not to a modern mediator. Doron Peli and I, we took the four big principles of Fisher and Urey, which everybody, I believe, in our audience is familiar with. How to do a successful negotiation, separate the people from the problem. That's what they taught us. Focus on interest rather than positions. Generate a variety of options before settling an agreement, and insist that the agreement be based on objective criteria. And Doron Peli and myself, we claim that when you come to intervene in a traditional, indigenous society, these four principles of Fisher and Urey need some major adaptations. And do not separate the people from the problem. You have to address the people. You have to take care of their honor. You have to take care of their faith needs. And you have to focus on honor perceptions and not on the positions, but not on the very capitalistic interests that the Western mediation is teaching us. And when we're talking about options, when we negotiate with Arabs, and we would say, this is an honorable agreement. This is an honorable sum of money. It would be worth more than the actual sum of money. Okay, so when we inject honor or faith into our negotiations or into our dispute resolution, that will make the difference, and that will allow us to do a better job. So to summarize, we in the West, we are taught that a mediator is neutral, that he is facilitative, he doesn't judge people, he's a good listener, he doesn't talk a lot, he listens a lot. He has no agenda of his own. He's totally involved in solving the other people's problem. He has no agenda of his own, and he doesn't enforce the agreements. He makes an agreement and he sends them to their way. While what we learned from all the sources that I quoted before is that a traditional dispute resolver will be judgmental. He will offer the solution. He has authority and he will dictate his solution. And he has an agenda to maintain the social order, the harmony, and also his own specific role within this group. And he makes decisions and he monitors the execution of agreement. And in many times, people will comply with an agreement because they don't want to mess with this person of authority who made the agreement for them. And when I look at the toolbox of traditional dispute resolvers, I think in most indigenous traditional cultures, we're talking about a gradual process. We're talking about influence. We're talking about many caucuses. We don't do everything together. We separate the parties. We shuttle between them. Either they come to the tree or we go to their locations. And we use a lot of rituals. And sociologists will tell us that the ritual is something that we always know what's going to happen next and how is it going to end. Our traditional dispute resolver are part of the solution. Sometimes they will even use their own resources to pay somebody something, to correct some wrong. They are part of the solution. This is something I spoke about last year, to think about how do we expose immigrants, traditional societies, indigenous societies to our mediation, to the modern mediation. And I found in the literature that there are 3 strategies to do that. The first is, to teach the mediation, Harvard-based mediation. And the second is to be culture sensitive, to adjust the way I teach mediation and I perform mediation. And the third known strategy is, elaborate a bit, to take the grassroots leaders, the religious leaders, and to teach them mediation, to teach them win-win and cooperation, and how to ask questions, how to reframe, how to rephrase, teach them our mediation. And so when we talk about standard mediation, we have a theory, we know what the conflict is, we know how to correct the conflict, we will separate the people from the problem, we will distinguish interests out of the positions, etc. So we have a routine, we have a theory, and I mentioned there are 3 schools of mediation: interest-based, transformative, and narrative mediation. They all assume that a conflict has its own pattern, and if we perform our ritual of mediation, our rain dance of mediation, we will be able to resolve the problem. Culture-sensitive mediation says that, yes, we know that conflicts have their own characteristic dynamics, and we know how to deal with them. But when we come to different cultures, we have to make some adjustments. For example, in the Jewish world, I will not shake hands with a religious woman. Okay, so I will adjust my behavior, but I will still perform the same mediation model. And again, I go back to the excellent book by Lee and Te from Singapore, Asian Perspective on Mediation. We can train mediators to be culture sensitive. And the third strategy I mentioned is to take the indigenous leaders, conflict resolvers, and to teach them mediation. And I don't remember who it was, but on this symposium, somebody quoted Jean-Paul Lederach and the work he did in South America. So I use the same story where he worked in Guatemala, and he trained Indian chiefs to perform mediation, but he did it with our Western style. And when they went into a role-playing simulation, the audience told the mediators, "You look like two gringos, like two North Americans." And this brought me to propose a fourth strategy of how to introduce modern mediation to a culture, to a traditional culture, which I call the hybrid model. And what I suggest is to co-mediate a teamwork of two mediators. One is a traditional conflict resolver, a rabbi, a chief, an imam, a village leader, and one is a modern professional trained by the Harvard-inspired interest-based mediation thought and model. And then we enjoy the abilities and the knowledge of both ways of thinking. So the traditional mediator, first of all, he would bring respect to the room and to the process. And he will maintain the social order, because I think in many interventions, even in the modern world, when I perform mediation between a boss and his employee, if I succeed, I want the boss to remain the boss and the employee to remain the employee. So, you know, being equal in the mediation room, eventually I want to restore the original social order, and the traditional problem resolver will do that. He usually will be aiming at the harmony of the group, the harmony of the society. So he wants a group where there are not many disputes, where disputes are resolved quietly, etc. Because of his authority, he would also bring the commitment of people to comply with what has been decided in the mediation. And he has a specific knowledge of how people live, how they behave, how they talk to each other, how they address a woman, a teacher, an old man, etc. And the other partner of this model will be the modern mediator, which will use his thinking of interest rather than positions. He would insist that people are there because of their out of their free will, and that they know what are their rights and what is expected of them and what are they allowed to do. He will try to encourage solutions that are win-win, and he brings his own knowledge of how to ask questions, how to reframe, how to rephrase, to do his part. And I said down there in the banner, together we are better. When we join forces, when we work well, and we are coordinated, a traditional mediator and a modern mediator, we can do a great job in societies of immigrants, traditional societies, etc. And I'm ending with why is all this important, and what can we get out of this symposium, and why is it relevant? And the first phenomenon I will point at is called the Vanishing Trial, which is a phenomenon in many countries in which the judges ceased to judge, okay? And most trials do not end with a ruling of a judge. If we're talking about criminals, we're talking about plea bargaining. So we don't know what the facts are. We don't know of what the person is guilty of. We make a deal. It's a plea bargain, and the judge is very happy. He doesn't have to investigate. He doesn't have to write a very long ruling. And that's in the criminal. In the civil courts, we're talking about settlements. We talk about sums of money, and we settle our disputes. And again, the judge will endorse, but he'll not go to investigate the truth and who did wrong to whom. They will reach a settlement between $1 million and $200,000, and this means that I think many people will lose faith and respect to the courts, because the courts are becoming a bargaining hall and not a courthouse. So we're looking again for other mechanism to resolve our disputes. Another thing, when we look to the traditional dispute resolvers, those who are seeking harmony, we find some counter to the adversarial thinking of many countries in the West, where we have two people and each one of them takes his lawyer and they litigate and they shame each other and they damage each other and they cost a lot of money, and they will not resolve the relationship between the people. So I find going back to traditional, to indigenous mechanisms, something that will make our society maybe less violent, less conflictual. And we return the power to the people. We go to our neighborhood leaders, we go to our church, we go to our local people who will help us with our problems, and we don't have to go to the police or to the court, to the state authorities, and we can make our decisions on our own. And the last point is, I like tradition. I think it's important to have a tradition. I think it's important to pass my tradition from my parents to myself and to my children and to my grandchildren. So when Vikram initiates a symposium on indigenous, on traditional ways to resolve problems, then I think it is very, very important. And if I go back to the first slide I showed, we're talking about a power or a need to live and a need to survive. Survival is to maintain some form of your tradition, of your traditional ways. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much. Of course, last time also I found that really interesting. Only thing is that we have to be, of course, a little careful, because we should not again fall into the trap of colonization, that there is a modern, which is what we have to sell. We have to be able to first, why this symposium is because, of course, distinguishing between mediation and arbitration, which is happening in indigenous cultures. So that definitely needs to be brought out. I don't know whether you saw my post. In my post, I'd actually put down what is the understanding of mediation and indigenous peoples that we'll use for this symposium. Did you have a look at that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
So I said, look, let's be very clear and let's tell people what mediation, as my understanding, I take it from that definition in Singapore Convention, because definitely people think that everything that happens in indigenous culture is mediation. Definitely not. But there are places where it does happen. So let's bring that out where it does happen, because what happens is there's a general brush that we paint things on. Either we go totally to this side and say it only arbitration happens and the person decides, or we go on the other side, they know they're all very collaborative and everything, they all. So of course, let's not fall on any side. Let's just bring out from each part. And then, of course, your aspect of the hybrid part of it is, of course, important. But at the same time, we have to move away from Urey and Fisher, because yes, I'm sure they come from a certain culture and society where they've thought of this. But we also have to look at a humanistic approach, a values-based negotiation, if you want to call it. So let's look at that. Let's not leave that. And if where finally, like I said, that original dispute resolution, what is that original one? We'll find out as we go along. So we still have to be right now, just be observing, because what we've got here is only about 31 speakers. That's it. So the next one next year, let's open it out. Let's go to every corner of the world and let's bring it out, because I am saying that there's lots we don't know. And that is something which definitely we can learn from. So today I'm saying that that's from my side. I'm saying, look, I'm not falling for any side on what is happening there. Sensitizing people because of change in society in relation to them, even the younger generation, even questioning what you said about the PDI, what is really happening there. It's changing. So in that change, there's a generation which is growing up, which is questioning all that. So one, we should also be looking at with that kind of change, how are we sensitizing the people who have been respected and saying, look, like, which I said last symposium also, look, you will become irrelevant. So if you want to stay irrelevant, you have to change these aspects, like you said, deciding for people and all that. So we have to bring that out, even in that particular, today you're saying because of the research you did with these people at that time, I'm saying there also things would have changed. And with the younger generation, things, the next generation, not younger, because the next generation would have also grown up now. So there is a generation which is definitely already questioning it. So we'll take all that into account. It's a lot of, I mean, what you have put across, which I was repeating every time in that symposium, that the hybrid concept that David is coming out, I think we really need to look at it, because merging the two definitely has to happen, but we still have to be careful. So let's tread very carefully, because we don't want to take away certain things, because it's again, let's not do colonization of those cultures. Let's not do that. So perfect. What we will do is I will end this session here, because the next one is Prem is here. Prem, you want to say hi to David? Prem is basically living in Thailand now. He's from Nepal. Yeah, Prem.
Hi.
Hi, Prem. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you too.
So thank you, David. I'll end the session. You can stay. I mean, we'll just start the next one. You can always stay. So thank you very much. Yep.
Yeah, I'll stick around for a while.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot. I'll just end this here. I'm not asking you to conclude, because